The air in the White House Situation Room was thick with tension. Outside, the night cloaked Washington, D.C. in an unusual silence, as if the city itself was holding its breath. At the head of the polished mahogany table sat Donald J. Trump, once again President of the United States. His fingers drummed impatiently on the folder before him, the one stamped top secret in bold red letters. The room was filled with the hum of low conversations, the rustle of papers, and the occasional clink of coffee cups on saucers. "Ladies and gentlemen," Trump began, his voice cutting through the murmur like a blade. "We're done playing nice. Traoré's gone too far." A map of West Africa illuminated the screen behind him. The red dot over Burkina Faso pulsed ominously. He thinks he can bring in Russian mercenaries, thumb his nose at us, and still cash in on American aid? Not on my watch. 60 days. That's what he gets. His national security advisor, a steely-eyed woman named Karen Blake, cleared her throat. "Mr. President, if I may, such a tight deadline could backfire. Traoré may dig in. We risk pushing him straight into the arms of Moscow and Beijing." Trump leaned forward, his gaze hard. "Karen, I didn't come back to the Oval Office to play Diplomat of the Year. We need to show strength. And I want that on every front page by morning." The room fell silent, save for the soft hum of the projector. At that moment, the decision was made. A formal ultimatum would be issued to Captain Ibrahim Traoré, leader of Burkina Faso's military government. He would have 60 days to comply, or face consequences that would change the region forever. The capital of Burkina Faso. The presidential palace is tense. Ibrahim Traoré, the young military captain turned president, receives the ultimatum from the U.S. Embassy. 60 days to cut ties with Russian mercenaries, restore democratic reforms, and halt all moves seen as threatening U.S. interests, or face devastating sanctions and possibly military action. Traoré is furious, pacing the grand but aging halls of the palace. His advisors gather, a mix of military officers, political loyalists, and technocrats. Some argue that the U.S. will never act on its threat. Others fear economic collapse or a coup. Internal division. Traoré's inner circle fractures into factions. The Hawks. These generals and hardliners want to defy the U.S. They believe Burkina Faso can survive with the help of Russia, China, or even Iran. They argue that African nations must stand tall against neo-colonialism. The pragmatists, technocrats, and moderate officers warn of disaster. They point out that U.S. aid keeps parts of the economy and military functional. Without it, food shortages, fuel crises, and public unrest could spiral. The secret dealmakers. A small group starts back-channel talks, both with U.S. intermediaries and with Russian and Chinese envoys, trying to find leveraged the international game. Traoré holds urgent meetings. The African Union. He appeals for solidarity, hoping other leaders will denounce U.S. interference. But many countries are cautious, unwilling to risk their own ties with Washington. Russia. A shadowy Russian emissary arrives in Ouagadougou, promising more military hardware and advisors, but demanding mineral rights and deep political loyalty. China. Chinese diplomats offer infrastructure loans and technology, subtly suggesting Traoré's shift towards Beijing's orbit for long-term survival. Traoré feels the walls closing in. He realizes he is becoming a pawn in a global power struggle. Public reaction. Word of the ultimatum leaks. The streets of Ouagadougou fill with protesters. Some wave Burkina Faso flags and burn U.S. flags, denouncing American imperialism. Others demand Traoré comply to avoid war and starvation. Social media explodes with conspiracy theories, calls for pan-African resistance, and rumors of an imminent U.S. invasion. The clock ticks. As the 60 days begin counting down, Traoré retreats to his private chambers at night, haunted by visions of his country in chaos. He debates whether to make a grand speech rallying the people against the U.S., seek a face-saving compromise, or gamble on an unexpected third option that no one sees coming. The chapter ends with Traoré staring out over the city at dawn, the weight of history on his shoulders as the clock ticks down. It's day 20 of the 60-day ultimatum. The world is watching as the deadline looms. In Washington, Trump ramps up his rhetoric. He gives fiery speeches, promising the American people that Traoré will soon face the full might of U.S. power if he continues to defy freedom and democracy. Cable news shows run dramatic countdown timers. Pundits debate whether war is inevitable. Meanwhile, in Burkina Faso, the sanctions start to bite. Fuel shipments are delayed or blocked at ports. Spare parts for military equipment are withheld. Key financial systems tied to U.S. institutions freeze Burkina Faso's assets abroad. The people feel it, prices soar, supplies dwindle, and protests erupt in the streets. Traoré's government tries to control the media, but social networks spread images of empty markets, angry crowds, and clashes with security forces, regional tensions, and military posturing. As day 30 approaches, the U.S. Navy positions an aircraft carrier strike group near the Gulf of Guinea, officially for regional security. Nearby U.S. bases in Africa go on high alert. Drones and surveillance aircraft fly along Burkina Faso's borders, sending an unmistakable message. France, watching uneasily, warns its citizens to leave Burkina Faso. The African Union calls for calm but struggles to mediate. Russia ramps up support, quietly shipping small arms and advisors to Traoré through neighboring countries. A Chinese freighter docks in a West African port, unloading supplies under cover of night. Inside Traoré's palace, Traoré grows increasingly isolated and paranoid. He fears coups from within his own military as factions grow restless. Some of his generals secretly open channels to the U.S. offering to remove him in exchange for lifting sanctions. But Traoré is determined not to appear weak. He gives fiery speeches blaming imperialist plots for his nation's hardships. Yet behind closed doors, he begins to consider unexpected options. A hasty election to appease international demands, but rigged to ensure his continued rule. A bold military operation to seize control of disputed regions and rally national pride. Or a surprise diplomatic move that could reset the game entirely. A dangerous leak. Around day 45, a major revelation shocks the world. A whistleblower leaks documents showing that U.S. Special Forces have been quietly operating inside neighboring West African countries, preparing for a potential intervention. The news sparks outrage across Africa and fuels anti-American protests, not just in Burkina Faso, but across the continent. Traoré seizes on this, calling it proof of a planned invasion. His government ramps up propaganda, urging the people to prepare for resistance. Countdown. The final days. The final 2 weeks are filled with brinkmanship. The U.S. freezes all trade with Burkina Faso. Food and medical aid convoys are blocked or delayed. Burkina Faso's military begins mass conscription and fortifies key cities. The world holds its breath as it seems a U.S.-led military strike could come at any moment. Behind the scenes, back-channel diplomacy intensifies. African mediators, European allies, and even private intermediaries try to broker a last-minute deal, but neither side wants to be the first to blink. Cliffhanger ending. As day 59 dawns, the world watches live as Traoré calls an emergency press conference. Rumors swirl. Will he surrender? Will he declare war? Will there be a surprise attack? He steps to the podium. Cameras flash. His face is grim, but determined. And then, he makes an announcement that no one saw coming. It's the penultimate day of Trump's 60-day ultimatum. Global media outlets broadcast live from Ouagadougou. The city is on edge. U.S. warships loom in the Gulf of Guinea. Drone footage shows Burkina Faso's military preparing for a possible assault. Anti-aircraft guns deployed, bunkers stocked, volunteers training with old rifles. In Washington, Trump's administration prepares final options: precision strikes, expanded sanctions, or green-lighting a coup led by disaffected Burkina generals. But then, Traoré appears before the nation and the world. Traoré's bombshell announcement. Traoré's face is somber, as he addresses the cameras. In the interest of peace and the future of Burkina Faso, I announce that we will hold free and fair national elections within 90 days. Our people will choose their path forward. Not at gunpoint, not by foreign command, but by their will. But there's a catch. One designed to maintain his grip on power. The elections will be overseen by an electoral commission packed with his allies. Emergency laws will restrict opposition parties under the guise of national security. Foreign observers will be tightly controlled or barred. The world is stunned. Trump's administration is caught off guard. On paper, Traoré is complying, but in practice, he's ensuring his own survival. Trump declares victory, but it rings hollow. In Washington, Trump holds a triumphant press conference. We stood firm, and look what happened. No shots fired, no boots on the ground, just strength and leadership. His supporters cheer, but behind closed doors, his advisors know the truth. Traoré has outmaneuvered them, giving just enough to avoid war while keeping real power intact. The unexpected crisis. Just as tensions seem to ease, disaster strikes. On day 60, a massive terror attack occurs in the Sahel, a coordinated strike by extremist groups on both military and civilian targets, including near U.S. and allied positions. Hundreds are killed. The fragile security of the region crumbles overnight. Suddenly, the U.S. and Burkina Faso, bitter rivals only hours before, are forced into an uneasy alliance to confront the new threat. Joint operations begin, with both nations realizing that their feud has opened the door for terror groups to expand dangerously. A new game begins. The final scenes show U.S. drones and Burkina Faso troops conducting joint missions. Russian and Chinese operatives quietly adjusting their strategies, unwilling to give up their influence. The people of Burkina Faso caught in the middle, still longing for true peace and prosperity.